All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to my channel and my very first live broadcast. I have no idea if this is working correctly. I sure hope that it is. But welcome. So one of the things I want to do, a habit I want to start creating is really engaging more with the writing community and the AuthorTube community. So I'm brand new. If you watched my very first video on the channel, you'll see that one of my main goals is to finish the latest draft of my novel that I'm working on so that I can hopefully submit it to Pitch Wars this fall. So we're in the middle of Camp NaNoWriMo. I'm working, and I've made some progress. So we're one and a half weeks in at this point in time. So I had intended to do a week one wrap-up video that I would post, but I work a full-time job. Things happened, they got in the way. And so I decided I would just go live because I'd already planned to do it anyway. So I figured I'd just lump it all in together. So I'm going to just quickly recap where I'm at in my story, how many words I've written, what I'm working on. And then from there, kind of talk about what I need to do this week, what my goals for today are. And then I figured we could do a little bit of writing and working together while we're all here. So first week roundup. Okay, cool. Let's figure that out. So I'm going to actually show you. Oh, I thought I was going to log in. So I have a spreadsheet where I track my words. I don't typically do this, but on months like this month where it's Camp NaNoWriMo and we're trying to write a bunch of words. Screen icon. What? Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. This is the first time I've used this application. Your browser has blocked your screen. Click the screen icon in your address bar. Show the screen. Done. Okay. Now let's try. Cool. All right. Sorry. I hope you guys have a lot of patience for this. All right. So basically, I have a spreadsheet where I track kind of what I'm working on. And I don't typically do this. I only do it during months where there's like Camp NaNoWriMo or National Novel Writing Month happening, and when I have really specific goals. So because I'm working on a deadline that is self-induced with the idea of me submitting to Pitch Wars, I need to keep a pretty strict schedule. So I have this spreadsheet and I've been tracking what I've been doing the last week. So I did pretty good. I have a full-time job. So I work Monday through Friday, technically 9 to 5, but it's more like 8:30, 8 a.m. until sometimes 6:30, 7. So I have a full-time job. It's pretty stressful. I'm a librarian, but I work in an academic institution, higher education. So we're figuring out how we're going to do, this fall with coronavirus and everything. So it can be pretty stressful. On top of that, I have anxiety. So I just want to take a quick moment and let's have a mental health break here and acknowledge the fact that this is a weird time for people who don't have mental health issues, and it's an even harder time for those of us with mental health issues. So I just have general anxiety. I've had it basically my whole life. I've been going to therapy consistently for the last year. I mean, I've been in and out for different reasons at different points in my life, but I've been going consistently working on my anxiety for the last year. And it's definitely situational anxiety. And in today's world of current events and a global pandemic, it can be a little bit more challenging. So I wanted to raise that because a trap I find myself in whenever I watch other author tubers or anyone really doing Camp NaNoWriMo or working really hard towards a writing goal that's structured anyway, I find I put a lot of pressure on myself. And that's just really unnecessary. So I wanted to raise it because I hope if any of you all struggle with this issue, I don't want to put pressure on you. Okay? So let's just take a moment. Let's have a mental health break. Let's grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something and just acknowledge that it is okay to not be okay, and it is okay to not always be productive, because it 100% is okay. All right. That being said, how many words did I write the first week of Camp NaNoWriMo? So my goal was 7,000 words. I kind of just pulled that out of my butt because I was like, hey, 1,000 words a day, 7 days in a week. Let's shoot for 7,000 words. I wrote 4,083. I honestly think that's really good for me. When I sit down to write, I typically will write anywhere from 700 to 1,000 words, but it is difficult for me to sit down and write every single day, mostly just because of my day job, because it can be so stressful and so demanding, and I spend the whole day at the computer doing a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of screen time work, a lot of creative work. By the end of the day, I'm drained, and I'm also not a morning person. I'm not going to get out of bed to write at 5 a.m. before I have to log into work. I've tried it. It doesn't work for me. I am most productive in the afternoons and evenings. That's just how it is. And if I spend all my energy and creativity up front on my day job, that's just kind of how it is. So I wrote 4,000 words just over that the first week. And I haven't written anything since. So I tracked this from July 1st to July 7th. And so week 2 is technically July 8th through the 14th. So we're like halfway through, and I haven't really written anything. And a lot of that is because it's been a rough week for me, like anxiety-wise. My anxiety's been higher, so I just haven't written a lot. And again, that's okay. But that's why we're here today. I'm feeling much better and more motivated to write today. So that's what we're going to do. So my goal today is I'm going to go big. I'm going to say I want to try to write 3,000 words today. That may be like overly ambitious, but that's the goal, and it is okay if I don't meet it, and it's okay if you don't meet your writing goal, because progress is progress. So I'm going to shoot for 3,000 words today. That may or may not happen here together. I figure we'll do a couple sprints together, and then if I'm still feeling up for it, I might continue writing, or if I need to take a break later, we'll just end the live stream and I'll keep writing individually. But that's my goal, 3,000 words. Let me know what your goals are. What do you usually shoot for? If you're like me, like are you a daytime, like full-time job by day, writer in the evening type thing? Do you reserve your writing for the weekend? Like, are you a weekend writer? How many words do you typically try to write on a weekend? I do find myself that if I do even like a minimal amount of writing on Saturday, I tend to be super productive on Sunday when it comes to writing. But if I don't write anything on Saturday, I tend to not write anything on Sunday either, because I end up putting tons of pressure on myself. Because again, anxiety brain. It's fun, guys. So yes, so that's my goal, is 3,000 words. We'll see if it happens together or not. I went ahead and dropped in the chat a link to one of my writing playlists. So this is actually a playlist I created for the book I'm writing on. I can't play it for you guys because copyright issues, but I figured I'd share it if you want to listen to it yourself. And so from here, I figure we can go ahead and jump into the first writing sprint. So I haven't written anything all day, so I think I need just kind of like a warm up. So I was thinking about doing 15 minutes. And then before I do that, I need to figure out where I want to write, like where in my book I want to write. So I don't write in chronological order. I jump around when I'm writing. Kind of what needs to be worked on and what do I feel like writing is the idea that I use. So I usually just jump around, which means when I've been away from my manuscript for several days, I have to spend like 5 minutes figuring out where I want to pick it back up. And of course, I've written all the quote easy stuff first and saved the harder, trickier bits for the last. So let me quickly take a peek here at where I want to start my writing. And I do have I have a couple options. So one, I have like a fighting tournament thing scene that I could work on. So that one's a little tricky in that it's a lot of action sequences that I kind of have to block out and write, as well as it's going to flip between two. So so my book I'm writing in third person. I started writing it in first person because by default, I think that's what I prefer to write in. But I'm writing an epic fantasy with a bunch of different characters, and to do first person, I would really limit how I could tell the story because my narrator would need to be in the room to convey information, and that just wasn't working for me with the grand scale I was going for. So I'm doing third person, but I have two primary focus points. So third person limited. So this action sequence, yes, it's third person, so I can jump around basically. But if you think of it like a movie screen, basically, the reader's attention is going to be drawn to a point of action between two characters and then another point of action between two characters that are in the stands. So it's a little tricky bit because I have to block the action and keep the pace high and fast moving, but also navigate some like political intrigue that's happening on the sidelines of this action sequence. So I could definitely write there today if I wanted to sink my teeth into something really difficult. The other option I have too is I have a witchy moment. That one I don't think that one's going to be that difficult and won't take me that long. So the other option I have is I have like a party scene I could write. So again, it's one of those scenes where there's a lot of characters and there's some physical movement where like the characters are moving throughout the room and conversations are happening, events are happening. And it's a bit of a turning point in the story where the tension is escalating. So I think I'll start here. I think I'll start in this party scene. I think that's a good warm-up spot. And then I'll switch to something more difficult for a longer sprint. But I was thinking for the first writing session, we could do 15 minutes to kind of get things started. So I'm gonna put the banner up and then change out which screen I'm using. Okay, so I've got a 15-minute timer ready to go. So you guys should be able to see that. So good luck, Godspeed on your writing, and we will check back in 15 minutes. All right. So we're down one sprint. Look at us. Who'd have thought? All right. So how did it go? How did everybody do? It was surprisingly easy for me to jump in. One thing I like about word sprints, and the reason why I do them, is because when a timer is running, I'm less likely to be self-conscious and edit and cut things out that I'm writing. I'm more likely to just, keep writing and moving forward. It's a little bit more freeing. So let's see how many words I wrote during that portion. Check out what my word count is. 8, 4, 7. So I wrote 475 words. That's pretty good. I'm pleased. Even if that was all I wrote today, I'd be happy about that. I have just a little bit more work to do in this scene, not a ton. So what I think I'll do is the next timer session will be I think I'll make the next one maybe 20 minutes and then check back in and see if I need to jump to a different scene. But yeah, I'm getting close to finishing, kind of hitting everything I need to hit. It's not the best scene. God almighty, no, it's not. It's messy, but I'm getting the bits and pieces down of what I need to do. So yeah, I think I'll make the next one 20 minutes and then we can check back in. Yeah, I think I'll do another 20 minutes and see how many words I hit at that point. And also maybe even in the live stream. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how we're doing. see. Jenny says she's been looking back at her notes from the romance series she's been imagining, trying to remember all the ideas that she had that she never got down on paper. Yes, that's always tricky. So one thing I do is, one of the reasons why I use Google Docs is because I always have access to it no matter where I'm working. So if I have a random idea in bed or in the bathtub or like out and about doing something, I can quickly write it down. So every story idea, I have a Google Doc and I'll just throw it down there in the Google Doc so that I always have a note of it. But when I'm really brainstorming, I prefer to write by hand because for whatever reason, it's a little bit more freeing for me to think by hand versus typing. So the other thing I do is I always have a notebook for each story idea. So like I have one story idea in this one, separate story idea in this one, and then I have a third one. Oh, here in this one. So I have 3 different notebooks for 3 different story ideas. And they're just really rough. Like sometimes, you know, an idea will come with like a full scene. And so I'll write like a full scene of like dialogue and everything. And then other, like, so this is like a chapter I wrote. And then other ones is just world building notes about religion or magic or whatnot. Like name location ideas, coffee stains. Just random stuff like that. And then once I get more confident about the story itself, I'll outline the plot. And then that eventually gets thrown into like a Google Doc. But like this is the notebook for the story and the series I'm currently working on. So I started out like mapping out my character profiles, and then I had like just a random page of lines that I thought a character would say. I drew like a map here, just ideas of like themes, timelines, like a calendar that I've come up with another map. So I prefer to start by hand, and then when the story's a little bit more structured, you can move it into the actual document. And then as far as like transitioning from, brainstorming and jotting down like your ideas and your characters and fleshing out your world and your story, and then like moving on to that outlining section of it, there's a couple different ways to do it. I think it comes down to if you are a plotter or a pantser, which I hate both terms, because in a way I think everyone has to be a bit of a plotter. Even if you're like not plotting hardly at all, you still are doing some plotting. And I really think it comes down to if you're a discovery writer. So I am definitely a discovery writer. So I go through extensive amounts of outlining, but I still surprise myself because no matter how detailed my outline is, I will discover things when writing. So for example, I have a super detailed outline and I go into it thinking, okay, I know that to move from Act 2 to Act 3, this series of events has to happen. And I think this particular scene will be like the crux of it and will be really meaty. And then I sit down to write, and it actually turns out it doesn't need to be as long as I thought it was. And then other scenes might need to be a little bit longer. So I think of that as discovery writing, because I can plan and outline, but until I actually sit down to write the scene, I don't really know how it's going to fit into the story. And at that point, if it's longer or shorter than I thought it was going to be, I might need to move it around in the timeline or the structure of the story to help with pacing. But that's all the stuff that comes later on after you do your first draft. And that's why first drafts are so messy. there's like this Terry Pratchett quote about the first draft is just you telling yourself the story, which I think is really accurate. But as far as how I actually outline, like the first outlining book I used was this one, Outlining Your Novel Workbook by Cam Wayland. And it was okay. It wasn't my favorite. It really focuses more on kind of brainstorming. So it was helpful in that regards. As far as like actually setting up a plot, I really liked the Save the Cat structure just because it was a structure. I don't necessarily think it's the end all be all, and I think it works better for some genres versus other genres. So I'm working on like an epic fantasy that's going to span 3 to 5 books basically. And Save the Cat I don't think fits perfectly for that genre, but it fits really, really well for other genres. But the one thing I like about it is that it's a structure. I also like it because, I'm blanking on his name. There's this guy who wrote a story. It's like The 1,000 Faces of the Hero. The Hero Has 1,000 Faces. Based in like, I discovered it because George Lucas referenced it when he was coming up with Star Wars. The basic idea is that there's like a basic structure in storytelling as far as what we're used to, how we're used to consuming stories. I think there's some truth to that, but it's also a very white Eurocentric view on things, and it's a very white Eurocentric analysis. So I found it interesting to read because it kind of maps out, let me see, I have it written down someplace. Stand by, here we go. So there's the hero's character arc basically, where when you're writing a hero story, which the argument that they make is that like every story is basically a hero story. There's 3 acts and there's all these like kind of points that your character goes through, and this applies to every genre is the argument that they make. But like you start in the ordinary world, there's a call to adventure. The character initially refuses the call, but they discover they have no choice but to answer the call for whatever reason. Oftentimes it's this idea of stasis equals death. So if the character doesn't answer the call, if they don't move forward, they will die. And if you look at Star Wars with this lens, you can see George Lucas mirrored this perfectly, particularly within A New Hope. Luke Skywalker gets a call to action. He meets with his mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. He discovers if he doesn't answer the call, stasis equals death. He can't stay at home because no matter what happens, they're going to come after him. So he has to answer the call. And then they cross the threshold and go through this series of tests, meeting allies, which is Han Solo. They meet their enemies, and then they go through this ordeal, and then have to go through the road back where they return with the elixir. So like it's this structure thing. And again, this is a very white Eurocentric story focus. Like this is built off of an analysis and lens of like European folk tales and fairy tales. So I want to be like really clear, like this is a specific lens that this is identified through. So I think that's a useful way to start thinking about your story, is how can you move your hero or your character through these moments. But there's actually another way I really enjoy. I'm looking for my other notebook. I'm getting my story Bible. So there's this thing called the plot embryo. And I actually discovered this through another writer on YouTube. Her name is Rachel, what's her name? I'm gonna have to look it up. Stand by. I'll drop it in the chat. So her name is Rachel Stephen. So Joseph Campbell knows the hero's journey. That's the structure I was just walking you through. She discovered another way to approach it where it's the same points, but it's a little bit tighter and a little bit more condensed. And the reason why I like this is because it's so visual, as far as identifying how your character is going to move throughout it. And the idea is that you do this embryo method for all your main players. So I found it really helpful writing an epic fantasy because I don't just have a hero that has an arc. I have a villain origin story I'm trying to tell, along with the development of a couple heroes, because it's a band of people epic fantasy story. So I have to basically do a plot embryo for each of these characters, and doing that helped me tie together a more cohesive story structure. So it's the same plot points. Let me see if I can where your character starts in their familiar world and you're setting up their fatal flaw, because this is the arc that every character goes on. They have a fatal flaw that they have to overcome. And the difference between a villain story and a hero story is that a villain story never overcomes their fatal flaw, whereas a hero can, and they do. They go through that transformation. It's like if you think about Beauty and the Beast. If the Beast never overcame his fatal flaw of never being able to love someone else or love himself, that would be a villain story. But because he overcomes that fatal flaw, he becomes a hero. So you start in this ordinary world with your character living with their fatal flaw, and you create an anticipation because they have to change. And the way that they change is overcoming their fatal flaw. And you do that by taking them on some adventure, some journey. And it can be really simple where like the journey or the adventure is they go to college or something like that. It's like a coming of age story type thing. It doesn't have to be like an epic quest. And you have all these plot points that you see mirrored in a lot of different things. So like Save the Cat mirrors a lot of the same plot points. Joseph Campbell's Heroes story has a lot of the same plot points. The plot embryo has a lot of the same plot points. But what I like about this is you do it for your individual character. So I did this for my villain, I did it for one of my heroes, and I did it for a second hero that I have who comes later on in the story. And what it does is it helps me identify how to tie all those character arcs together. So that's one thing I really like doing. And Rachel Stephen has like a whole video series on the plot embryo method that you should definitely check out because it's marvelous and it's free. I believe you have to sign up for her newsletter, and then once you sign up for her newsletter, you'll get the links to the videos. But I find it incredibly worthwhile. And then last question I'll answer is, what's the story Bible? So this is just, so after I exhaust writing in a notebook and just jotting ideas down as they come to me, when you start trying to like combine everything and sift through it to write your story or your series, the like story Bible comes in handy for that. So it's a little bit more organized, and I did it because I'm writing like a series, an epic fantasy series, and so I need some continuity and references to help me figure out information as I'm like moving throughout the series. So like I have a section on character profiles where it's literally like I have an A to Z list of all my characters to make sure I don't have too many characters starting with the same letter, their ultimate motivations, and then I'm going to put together a relationship tree of all the characters, and then like the locations and settings. Like I have a map that I created of some locations, different versions of the map as I was working on it. I've created a language in this world, so my alphabet, which helps me with like naming conventions as far as how I show the language. So I'm not going like full Tolkien and writing like a whole language. I don't have time for that. But what I did was I settled on a alphabet with some like basic grammar and vocabulary structure so that I could introduce the language through certain words for things. Like I have some root words, and this comes up with like the calendar and time, and particularly the religion. Things that are considered holy would have these words and whatnot. And like creating root words really helps expand the language of the world. So that's in here. I have a list of creatures that I'm going to be using because, again, this is a fantasy story. I have a whole section on magic, weapons, and technology to make sure I'm kind of staying within the confines of the roles I create for my magic system. Symbols, beat sheets, which again is basically like an outline. So, and again, I like looking through this, I can see all the different ways I tried to outline this story. So like at one point I tried making a calendar and say, okay, like this is how the characters are moving through the story on this day. I tried doing what J.K. Rowling did with the Harry Potter series, where you have a massive spreadsheet with the plot point, a quick summary of what happens in that scene, and then all your big character relationships. So who appears in those scenes and who doesn't, to make sure that all your characters are getting enough like screen time. Because it bothers me when like you'll be reading a book and like you have characters introduced and they're clearly relevant, but then they drop off the page for like 75, 100 pages and then they randomly pop back in. So I've tried doing this method and then ultimately landed on the plot embryo. And then there's like a section in the back for future story, maps, and subplot ideas. But basically, this story Bible is just taking the like random notebook of ideas and organizing it so that I have something to go back to as I get into book 3, book 4, book 5. My guess is when I finally finish book 1, and it's at a point to where I'm querying agents and hopefully querying publishers, and like, you know, once I have a book deal type thing, fingers crossed that actually happens at some point. My idea is that when that happens, I'll go back in and really update the story Bible to help me as I write the rest of the series, just for like continuity's sake. So if you're writing like an individual book, I don't think it's really necessary. But because I've created this fantasy world, I just have a lot more stuff I have to keep track of. So that's my attempt to stay organized. All right. So I've yammered on enough. Let's do one more writing sprint or working session. So you can write with me the session. You can outline. You can go look up the plot embryo method if you want to go look that up. And again, the link I dropped in there for the plot embryo is a link to purchase it. So it's like a printable thing that you can purchase from Rachel directly. You don't have to do that. If you want to, you can learn the plot embryo technique. Which it looks like that link's broken on her website. I will try to find, I don't know if she's still offering the videos or not. I'll try to dig up a link to sign up for the videos. And if I find them, I'll drop them down in the video description once this is static on YouTube. And I'll put it there in case anyone is interested in that. Otherwise, if I can't find it, I'll just drop a link to Rachel's YouTube channel because she's lovely. And she's also getting ready to do a new series on how she gets organized for writing. She has a couple interesting techniques that she does. So I'll drop links to her YouTube channel at a minimum. in the static description. But all right, I'm going to jump back into this scene that I'm working on. My main character is not happy, but she's typically not super happy. So I'm going to pick back up here. I'm going to set the timer for 20 minutes, I think. So we'll do 20 minutes. Good luck to you all. Let me get the banner going. We're doing second sprint here. And let's get go. All right. That went by really fast for me. I don't know how fast it went for you all. Let's see, how many words did I write? So, 9. Okay, so altogether today, so with the first sprint and this sprint, I have written just over 1,000 words, which is great. I am a third of the way through to my goal. So I still have a bit more to do on this scene. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm kind of down to one of my last moments. So what I think I might do is I'm going to keep working on this scene today. It's actually ending up longer than I thought it would, the scene itself, but it's making sense as I'm working through it. So I think what I'm going to do is take a break here. So I'm going to make a note in my manuscript to pick up here. And I like that really fast. Okay. So then you want to take a break, grab some food, and then come back and write some more tonight. Because we've already been here together for just over an hour. And we've only done, I know, like 35 minutes of writing together, but I don't want this to be like an epically long video. And also I'm hungry. And I can hear my husband in the kitchen like making food, and I'm curious about it, so I want to go eat. But I hope that went well for you all. I hope you got some good work done. I'm going to keep writing today, and I'll be posting up on Instagram, about my progress. So feel free to check in with me there about how your writing's going, and how your goals are going for Camp NaNoWriMo. Hopefully I'll get back on track within the next couple of days. And we'll see what happens from here. But good luck to you all with Camp NaNoWriMo and all your writing goals. And I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye, y'all.